The following episode of the Carnival of Randomness is sponsored by an important message to you, the people, from Upsitnik and Associates. Every day there are forces that are taking from you, stealing from you. Your money, your time, your freedom. Immense faceless corporations, banks, credit card companies, insurance providers, government agencies, this list goes on and on. When you are under attack and facing crisis, turn to us, Upsitnik and Associates, attorneys for you, the people. When every day becomes a battle, we can advise and assist. We have been advocates for 40 years. Email us through upsitnikslaw.com or call us at 1-866-391-3299 or reach out to us through Upsitnik and Associates on Facebook for a prompt, no obligation communication and consultation. Don't be pushed around.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carnival of Randomness. It's spring here in Washington. The cherry blossoms are out, and it's Rob here. And Zach, did you cut down the cherry tree?
I cannot tell a lie. I set it on fire.
Thank you, please. We're here actually to lobby for a statue for Emperor Norton I of America. And yes, Emperor Norton was a real thing.
Oh, that guy in San Francisco?
Yeah, he was. He was a real guy. He was a real guy who
they
made empire. They made emperor, and they actually gave him a thing, and people would give him money, and there's coins and dollars. He's real. Look him up. But I have to say, first thing I have to say is Trump 2020, keep America great. Okay, do we lose half our audience there? Well, now I'm hoping the Democrat wins in 2020 because we have to save this country. Now, is everybody gone?
Great, we just lost the entirety
So
of the
everybody's
audience.
gone. You want to talk about cereal or anything?
Well, we might as well.
Well, politics is a tough subject, and we have our issue shows with Rageonomics, and a lot of people have complained that Jeff is so pro-New York tourism.
He's really got to balance himself out, and he's really got to express himself
and
more.
The problem with shows talking about politics these days, everybody yells, everybody hates somebody else. And we wanted to talk about politics a little bit for once on the Carnival and do it the Rando way, because we both have some experience in the system. We could talk about how it's been, how it is, give our views on what's wrong, everything else, and
you more so than me
because
I know you worked here in D.C. for quite a while.
And full disclosure, I actually worked in Washington, D.C. for most of the 90s and interned there when I was in college. And I had an idea how it went. This is almost 30 years ago. Yes, I wasn't even born yet. I did it.
I know, that's weird.
And it seemed to me when I see things going on now, it just seems so different. Something's gone really wrong. And we're going to talk about that a little. I'm going to give some perspective of how it was. And you have some ideas from the local scene, too.
Well, yeah, the local scene. Growing up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, my mom was involved in local politics. When I was born, she was on the I can't even call it a city because it wasn't a city, the town council. Actually, technically, we're a borough, the borough of Verona, Pennsylvania. And then as I got older, she was actually mayor of our little town right before we moved. And there was a reason for that, because she did a lot of good, chased out some of the old guard that were still running their chicanery poker machines. And her reward for building up the town and bringing some businesses in was having the FBI called on her.
We'll get into
by the old guard.
We shall get into that. First thing I want to do is get into terminology a little bit. Words really don't mean as much as you think they are. If you hear classical liberal, all that would mean is it's a thing that came up almost around the time of the American Revolution. All it meant was that a person in a state were different autonomous entities. That's all classical liberal meant, because before you were attached to the state, either in a feudal system. But now the only reason right-wing and left-wing came up is, are you aware of this? It came out of the French Revolution.
I did not know
where
that,
the left wing were the people with Robespierre and the Jacobins, and the right wing were the opposition. They were more the monarchists and stuff.
I thought the left wing were the guys that took more penalties, and the right wings were the guys that scored more.
I thought defense took more penalties myself.
Yeah, but of the wings.
So that's where it comes out from. And actually, if you look at the political parties, they've changed a heck of a lot. Remember, the Democratic Party was founded by Andrew Jackson, that's why we have the jackass.
Yeah.
And he was quite the bad man.
Well, he's the only president to date whose parrot was removed from his funeral for swearing.
And the thing was, the party was known almost the party of segregation, the KKK.
Yes.
And you can go back, there's a very bad history going through there, and it evolved around, whereas the Republican Party, founded by Lincoln, was the party of anti-slavery.
Right.
And that all of a sudden it came around. Really, it changed in the 60s.
I was going to say, at some point in the more recent history, the party ideals almost flip-flopped.
And Vermont was actually one of the most Republican states in the nation. The first time it ever voted for a Democrat was in 1960. It was the most Republican. So think about that.
So it's those damn hippies we have to blame.
Ben and Jerry land.
All those sons of bitches.
I'm just trying to do this to say how things flow and how it turns around. And a lot of it came out of really Goldwater and Johnson and then Nixon's Southern strategy. Mm. So that's more of how we have the founding of what's the modern thing. But this is just a little historical background.
Yeah, you have to lay down a foundation before you build the house of knowledge.
And then just about name calling and everything. If I say conservative to you, what would you say would be some of your negative feelings about it? And maybe a little positive?
Okay, well, just from as of late, when you think conservative, you think more of the religious views, the, what would be the best word to put it without pushing too many hot button?
It's cold out, don't worry about it.
Well, but no, like the conservatives are the more religious, traditional, we need it the old ways are the best ways. Whereas if I hear liberals, you think more of the free thinking.
We'll get into the old...
Yeah, but I jumped the gun.
Well, I think I look away a little bit as the whole, and I've been just watching it a little, so I'll say like you may picture like the Archie Bunker-like guy who's, I don't have anything against, name your group, but, and they think if you're not like them, they're bad.
Exactly.
And they're very unwilling to change, but then there's the positive. Abe Lincoln even said it, you take what works. Say something's going well, you stick with it. And there are some things we should conserve and continue on and use.
Absolutely. You know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and a lot of it, some of them just say they're not ideological either, that you just try to look and you try to solve problems. Mm. But now if you toss out liberal, what would you say would be a negative and positive?
Not a liberal. You know, lately there's been a lot more of the negative aspects, but...
Well, that's why they call them so progressives, because I think the word got demonized, especially like the last...
It definitely has, but I would say it's, the more free-thinking, forward advancement, more accepting of others, even though if you look at it, they kind of aren't.
And that's the thing about it, is a lot of people who claim to be liberals are the most intolerant people I know I've ever met. And as you're a liberal, the thing was, it's okay if you think freely as long as you agree with me. So we have all these quandaries going out there with the things. But I want to talk about what I've been involved with and you've been involved with, because free admission here, I actually was a Republican one time. And the reason I was a Republican was because I have that contrarian nature, and everybody around that time when I was in college were Democrats. That's basically it.
Well, I think that's why... And especially the older generation, that's why they pick political parties.
Because I could always joke, my mom was always, her family were Republicans, my dad's were Democrats, so they would cancel out each other's votes. But I looked around at the time, and I would just look at candidates when I was too young to vote, and just see who I thought I liked, and I didn't have any idea anyways.
Well, that's the thing, and a lot of these, especially these days, a lot of candidates almost seem manufactured.
But that's what I was. And I remember my friend Dale, we were out one time at Hogan's Hideaway with a bunch of friends, and this was Bush and Dukakis. And Dale goes, well, he's a Republican. And they looked at me and said, but you're so young. Like I hadn't been jaded by life or whatever.
No.
And that actually came from a book. It almost reminds me of a quote from Snapshots from Hell. This was a person, Peter Robinson. He worked for Ronald Reagan, and he went to Stanford Business School. And what he said was, it's an interesting book. If you ever read it, you'll never want to go to business school, basically. But he said that everybody was a Democrat there. But he said the alumni were saying, wait 10 years, come back to a reunion, everybody will be a Republican. Because they've got hit the old thing there's another book called Common Ground. And it was, in the definition, you've heard this maybe, it's aired around, a conservative is a liberal mugged by reality.
Oh, I like that. I've never actually heard that
And
before.
It's a book about what happened was desegregation, and when it really hit Boston was when it really, really had problems. And the author was an idealist, and he remembers getting an apartment in the city and getting mugged and changing his views a little bit.
Well, that would do it.
But Robinson's book says that, yeah, you have a family, you have mortgage, you have to look at the world more realistically. You become a more conservative, more right-wing.
Right.
And I think as we become grumpier old men, we become more stuck in our ways, too.
Well, I think that's it. The older you get, the less likely you are to change because you've been with something for so long, and you don't want to. I call it the old shoe principle. Everybody has those old shoes. They know they should get rid of them, but they can't bring themselves to do it because they fit. They fit nice. You know what it's going to be, even though it might be full of holes and smells.
And that's of course, why we always say that every generation after ours sucks too. Because those damn kids or whatever, they don't know.
Kids
back in my day,
playing on my lawn.
I had to walk to school in blizzards.
Uphill both ways.
If we could get
75 miles with the heated potato in your pocket.
Often could get the horse out of the barn.
Right.
But just to compare a little bit. Now, I worked back in Washington. I had an internship, and I sort of went from there back in 1989-ish, 90. And it was at the Republican Study Committee, and I mentioned this. It's called that. I think it might still be around now. To explain what that is, it's one of many on the Hill. It's a legislative support group. And what that is you're there and you're actually funded by the party. And you do basically research papers, theses, help out with it for everybody in the Senate and Congress. Not just Republicans, though. Democrats could call. And from that, I actually got a big perspective on how everything was there. And I got to meet a heck of a lot of people.
You mentioned just in talking in the past, the guys in... the men and women in politics you've had run-ins with over the years.
Oh, often.
There's some big names.
But one of the ones,
roster.
This is one of the things how things change and how you look from perspective. Because not only like if you met somebody, but if you heard something about someone, and then you see them, they finally come to prominence a little more, and they're totally different. And that would be Dick Cheney, because in the day he was the DOD, Department of Defense Secretary. He'd been a congressman from Wyoming for around 10 years. They only have one congressman, so it's a pretty good gig.
Yeah.
And actually, he was a chief of staff for Ford when he was only in his early 30s.
I didn't know that.
Very impressive resume. Yeah. But at the time, everybody not only respected him, but liked him.
Which is weird looking at him now, as you called him the other day, the Dr. Evil type.
And it's amazing because Geraldine Ferraro, the ex-congresswoman, Mondale's vice president, when he got picked for vice president by George W. Bush, she said everybody likes Dick Cheney. Really, seriously, you can look this up. It's on your news shows unless they got rid of it.
Oh, no, I believe she said that, but you look at it now, it's like, ooh, swing and a miss.
And everybody really respected him. And the thing about it, a lot of people wanted him to run in 1996, but you have to remember he had a lot of heart issues. So he sort of went on his way, and then maybe he went to Halliburton, and became
I think, that was
enticed by the dark side, because the person that came out is not the person that I used to hear about.
Darth Cheney?
Yep. Never. You always heard good things about him.
Well, it's kind of weird how somebody can change that drastically over not that long a time period, really.
And you think maybe, why would being vice president go to his head, considering he was a defense secretary, he was chief of staff?
Well, I mean, as Lewis Black once said, even if you're the vice president, you can. There's no bar in the world you can walk into and have to pay for a drink.
Yeah.
As he said, he's like, holy shit, it's Vice President Cheney. Somebody buy him a margarita.
Well, there was always the joke that when Bush was looking for a vice president, Cheney was on his committee helping. And it's almost the case of like when Harrison Ford was helping George Lucas audition Han Solos and managed to get the role. This guy, what do you think? Nah, I don't think he's that good.
Well, these guys all suck. I might as well do it.
But the other part about then, those were the days of the George Herbert Walker Bush days. And they were a lot different. You did not have the hatred.
No, it wasn't as vile and visceral as it is today. And now, to interrupt you.
No, speak out.
My thoughts are, do you think a lot of that is because there was no social media back then?
I think that's big. I think some of it did start. We saw the growth of it a little bit. Now, you have to understand something. We'll go back a minute. You hear negative campaigning. That was a Lee Atwater term.
Oh, yeah.
Politics, let's be honest, it's never been a clean freaking game. What
was the term mudslinging back in the old days?
How many, we could say what they called Lincoln. I think our good old friend Andrew Jackson, did he challenge so many people to duels?
Well, I think he actually, I don't know how many, if he killed a guy or I think he actually was shot at some point.
And not just, he beat the hell out of his...
Yeah, the one guy
tried
who
to assassinate
both
him.
pistols. didn't go off, and I think actually that gentleman was saved by, who was the congressman? Was it Davy Crockett or Daniel Boone?
Davy Crockett, I
Yeah,
think.
'cause
Daniel Boone was more of a recluse.
Yeah, Davy Crockett was there and actually pulled Jackson off him because he was whomping his ass with his cane.
And in a way, the guy was a real nasty piece of work.
Oh, he was.
But you love a president like that who some guy tries to do that, douche the hell out of him?
The attitude-wise, yes, but if you look at his policies, he was one of the most deplorable human beings to ever sit foot on this earth.
Yes, he was.
I mean, let's be frank.
Go down to some reservations and try to pass a 20.
Yeah, a lot of them will not take them.
And that's the thing, and we'll talk. Well, we might have a historical episode about the president.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
And we could talk more about
presidencies
because he was interesting. But obviously, politics, it's a dirty business. A lot of nasty things come out. Look at the Daisy ads from Goldwater and Johnson.
Oh, boy.
And it goes on from that. You're trying to win an election. But I think a lot of it does come out of social media now, the viciousness. But one of the things was they always talk about Lee Atwater. Lee Atwater was George W. Bush's campaign manager, and he came up with the idea of negative campaigning, where the idea was, okay, you have an opponent, you don't emphasize your positive qualities. There's a line. If you can get this person under this line for likability, you'll win.
Well, and actually, interestingly enough, it's a more recent politician that took an opposite approach in his campaign for the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
Yes.
The man's name is Glenn Jacobs. People would probably know him better from his other work in pro wrestling. But he said in many interviews, he said, I'm not going to run a dirty campaign because at the end of the day, we all have to work together. So if you slander your opponent, what's going to make them want to work with you to make things happen? And I think most big elections in the past, 10, 15 years has been evidence of that.
With that, too, ironically, I think some of my favorite politicians of the last 20 years have been wrestlers. Because if you look at Jesse the Body Ventura.
Jesse Ventura, governor of Minnesota.
Back in the day, I actually was more of a news junkie. I admit now I try to balance the line of being informed with keeping my sanity. Well, so sometimes I'll just tune it off. But I used to be a big C-SPAN fan. And I would watch, because when they had the election season, they would show a lot of the debates and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to watch, it was Jesse Ventura, and it was Norm Coleman and Skip Humphrey, Hubert Humphrey's son. And maybe you should use a different nickname than Skip when you're running for governor. But the thing about Jesse Ventura, if you saw his ads and everything, they were fun. He had a sense of fun to them.
Yeah, he had a sense of fun, and because he wasn't taking himself too seriously, but he knew what he knew. He's a smart man.
And these guys were just stick in the mud, boring politicians, and I think they didn't understand that when they let him into the debates, when you're debating a guy who could speak who's wearing a feathered boa, you're in trouble.
Well, that's the thing. His job for many a year...
Mayor Brookline, he was too.
He was, yes.
And he was a broadcaster.
But his job for many a year was to entertain people and get them on his side by talking and manipulate them into believing what he wanted them to believe.
But I do believe social media has a big play, because I can go back to those days, and I'll go back even, like I said, I was a Republican by default, and honestly, it was one of the things for me too, and I'll say this, is back in the day, God, I sound old when I say that.
A little bit.
But I was really, my issue was not more really domestic social policy. Remember, I was a young kid of like 2 or whatever.
Yeah, a young kid of
old enough to
-8.
lie about my age. So my big concern at the day, these were still the days of the Cold War, and I became very, very big, and my background was in history and political science, and I was very big into Russian studies, and I was very much more concerned with the foreign policy side. Very much more. I would have been more like Richard Nixon without the crookery. Well, I mean, okay, to a degree, you know.
Thank you.
But I was very much more, and I wasn't really concerned that much about domestic policy. So I was looking at that side and looking at the Cold War, so I was gravitating to that. But back when we were there, we would have the college Republicans, college Democrats. We were all friends.
Yeah, it's amazing how much has changed just in 20 years. And well, my thought on the social media thing was, you look at the sad to say, but the power it gives people to express hatred and ignorance and prejudice.
Well, I can remember
on a platform
we went to a
that
party.
Everybody can read.
We used to have a night class. We used to go to, a bunch of us, and we would go to one of my friends' houses afterwards. And I remember the one time I'm there, I have a Bush sticker on. My friend, who's the head of the College Democrats, has a Dukakis sticker. And we're sitting there together, no problem. Whereas, could you imagine doing that today?
Oh, God, there'd be a war.
But I do think social media plays a big part. And a lot of it's the invisible factor. Where the old days, maybe you went down to the bar, maybe your buddy bartender said, leave politics and religion out of it. Yeah. But you would get discussions. You'd be face to face. You'd be in your own neighborhood.
The power of anonymous.
And now you could write something online. Everybody, if you go on Facebook or any of these other things, everybody seems damn angry about something.
Yeah, every news outlet, C-SPAN, Washington Post, Yahoo, CNN, there's somebody in the comments screaming some sort of hatred
and
about
not just
something.
them. Look at anybody who's on your friends list. Look what they post, and they're damn mad.
Oh, my God. You see some of the things on Facebook, and they're angry, and they don't know what the hell they're angry about. They're just yelling.
And I can go back. I've seen ones. There's a famous thing, Albert Camus used to talk to John Paul Sartre, and used to say, well, if a conservative says the sky's blue, is the sky purple? Now, if somebody doesn't agree with you and is right or makes you think, but these days you'll see people, like I've seen ones where people will claim to be open-minded and they'll write posts. A person will argue with the post in a very intelligent way, and the person doesn't react by good point. I've learned, no, oh, you disagreed with me, I'm going to unfriend you.
Okay.
So that's why I don't bother really with, and that's why we really don't bother on here. But somebody's got to talk about this sometimes who just doesn't.
It's like the elephant in the room. Eventually, it's going to have to get addressed.
Yeah, and we do, like I say, when we do our Rageonomics, we do talk issues, but that's more issue-orientated.
Yeah, that's not specific to politics.
But back then, too, what was interesting, and we'll get into this, I think one of the problems with the system is a lot of people are just not informed and don't bother.
And it's gotten to the point of dangerously uninformed.
And I can go back. So I was young and enthusiastic. I have my little elephant.
Oh, reality hadn't punched you in the junk yet?
When you're that young, I suppose maybe, I don't even know any of you kids these days, darn it. But if you ever get involved in this, you believe you're making a difference when you're not. Well, but I was at that stage, and I would be going down working on the campaign and doing things, and just then afterwards, when you went to the party election night, it was like really exciting, really fun. And then I got a little elephant as a gift.
Aww.
Which was so cute. But the thing was, one of the things that got me now, however you felt about Michael Dukakis, I do not think was a bad man.
I don't think
he made an unfortunate ad with that tank.
That's the thing. I don't think he was a bad man. I just think he listened to the wrong people. Like that tank ad was something, that should not have happened.
But one of the things with that, too, was with George W. Bush, one of the factors we used to do phone banks, call people up. You would get a lot of people who didn't realize there was a presidential election.
Oh, my.
And one of the things with Bush, you would hear a lot, well, I don't think I'm going to vote for him. He seems like a wimp. Do they know the background?
The one thing I think, if history has taught you anything, is that you should never vote for a president based on how much you want to have a beer with them.
True, and the thing, he had that preppy look. He did go to Yale and everything.
Yeah, skull and bones, man.
Whereas Reagan looked like he was the cowboy from the West. Reagan was an actor who
worked with the chimp.
He served in the cavalry for a little while. He didn't dodge the draft or try to get out of World War II, but they found out his eyesight was so bad he couldn't serve. So he made combat movies, but he was an actor, and he worked for General Electric. George... I keep saying, I'm tired of saying this, Bush the first.
Just H.W.
Yeah, H.W.
H.W.
He was a fighter pilot in World War II who got shot down. You can read a book called The Flight of the Avenger.
Oh, that, yeah.
Where he got shot down and he was at sea. This is a wimp?
Yes.
But people didn't realize that.
Well, because people are just weird.
And even there's thoughts that he picked Dan Quayle because he was so used to the label that he wanted somebody he was superior to, which is...
Well, to be fair, with good old Dan Quayle, that could be a very nice guy. I don't know anything about him, but he will forever be entrenched in American history as the potato-y guy.
I think a lot of things with him is that it sticks. Because that's what John McCain, and I'll say, one of the interesting characters I did meet back then was John McCain. I admit... Agree with him, disagree with him. I actually liked him.
I liked him. from the very little I knew about him, I didn't mind
He
him.
was renowned for his his barbecues, I guess, in Arizona.
I actually voted for him for president.
And I really...
He didn't win, but I voted for him.
Because you have a streak like that, I think.
I have not picked a winning president yet, and I started, my first presidential election was 2000, so I'm 0 for, would that be 5?
Like,
to be fair, my mom didn't pick a winner until W.
Yeah. Well, I remember...
She started voting in 72.
And John McCain, I didn't know the whole story where he couldn't even lift his arms above his shoulders because he was a POW.
Yeah, the POW.
But he had that Top Gun feel about him, that swagger. But I really liked him, and I remember his quote about Dan Quayle was, all I know about Quayle is that he's from Indiana, he's handsome, and he's dumb as shit. And he was
what the funny thing is? That kind of summed him up.
And the thing is, it's always stuck because I think sort of partly he was. And they always said Richard Lugar, who was the senator from Indiana for many years, who was thoroughly qualified to be president, that he would have felt like he was Ward Cleaver and the Beaver got picked over him.
Well, to be fair, when was the last time the person, as the sitting president, was the person most qualified to be president?
Oh, you go through the history of the country, and it's amazing, the process.
I would pick the last one to be able to do it probably was George Washington.
Well, go back to George's time. Everybody was really qualified, but there's a very good book called The Triumphant. It was about Calhoun, Webster, and Henry Clay, and it said that period between Lincoln, really the Gilded Age, from really Lincoln till Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
That period, you're at a period of amazing growth and expansion for America.
Well, yeah, because you're coming out of the Civil War, the antebellum age, the Reconstruction era, and yeah, everything just blew up.
And they pointed to these three men who were never president.
Yeah.
And they said this was an era of incredible prosperity for America with a bunch of mediocre presidents.
Well, that's the thing. You look at post-Lincoln, pre-Roosevelt.
We are apologizing right now to fans of Chester A. Arthur or James Garfield.
The man had some intense mutton chops. But you had, Andrew Johnson came after Lincoln, was almost impeached. No, he was impeached.
Yeah, he was impeached.
He was impeached. Forgive me. He was the first of the two that have been impeached.
Yep. I think he got impeached now. I may be wrong, but he canned Stanton or something.
Yeah, he fired Stanton when he wasn't allowed to and replaced him with somebody without having a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why Andrew Johnson was impeached.
Then maybe one of note, because then it was U.S. Grant.
Yeah.
And now history's been unkind to him, not as a general, as a president.
I don't understand why. He wasn't bad. He just didn't do much.
You go back and they say, well, it was a very corrupt time, but nothing with him, though.
No, not with him.
His administration.
Yeah, his administration, but he personally, he was a soldier.
There was a lot of brutality on the frontier, but I know a lot of the tribes used to call him the Great White Father, and they respected him. Yeah, of course, his buddy, like Sherman, a little different. He probably saved them. He probably saved a lot of tribes from what these guys really wanted to do.
History reveals all, and the greatest quote I ever heard from Sherman, because they were pushing him to run for president. I believe it was along the lines of, I will not run if nominated, I will not serve if elected.
Yep.
Because he was smart enough to realize that the presidency is not the Army.
Yes.
In the Army, you give an order, they carry it out. That
good old Uncle Billy there was not really a Democrat, small d, big D. He really more believed almost like in a military dictatorship because he wanted stuff done. He wanted
shit to get done efficiently and quickly.
But then you went through a whole bunch like Rutherford B. Hayes.
Yeah.
Then maybe
Arthur.
The one interesting one, of course, is Grover
again.
Cleveland. Because he's the only president to be elected twice in non-consecutive terms. And the Baby Ruth bar is named after his daughter.
Yeah, not Babe Ruth.
No, a lot of people think that, but it was his daughter.
Because what was he, 22 and 24?
Yeah,
with Benjamin Harrison in between, the grandson of William Henry, who died after a month, the greatest president ever.
But that's how it went. So a lot of times the presidency, and Dr. Harmon, any of you now who are just, I can't take it, and people back in Obama's day, I can't take it, and people back in whoever, Democrat, Republican.
Yeah, people back in...
My professor, Dr. Harmon, said at one time, and believe it or not, back then elections, it was getting a little bit, in those days, tense about the election, which these days would have been nothing. And he said, look, whoever wins tomorrow, the sky's not falling. The republic will go on.
That's what I mean. You have I guarantee you that back in Franklin Pierce's day, there was people going, "Oh, I can't take it. This is the end of the world."
And the sad part is, as you get older too, you can almost amazing how quick it goes to the next election.
Right, it's almost time.
Jesse Ventura again. He was governor of Minnesota. Minnesota's still there. It was fine.
Yeah, exactly.
We have
Knox County hasn't burst into flame.
Yeah,
and he's been in office.
We have
since
some
November.
really bad people in office, yet we somehow persist.
Isn't that weird?
It's amazing. But one of the things too I got that was really funny back in those days, you really learned about lobbyists.
And who have all the power.
And you find out a lot about this. And we would get calls that would be really funny. We get the cereal lobby. What'd you have for breakfast today? They would say this.
Really?
Yeah. And we'd get free boxes of cereal.
Oh.
And the Hayes Adams was across the street. And I guess that's where the term lobbyist came into being, because the politicians would meet people who would basically bribe them off in the lobbies there.
I was going to say it would probably have something to do with meeting in the lobby.
And that's also the infamous park where they had the drug deal where they caught some guy. So George W. Bush, again, the first one, he could show the drugs on his one thing. They caught a guy out in the park because that was just saying no to drugs those days.
Yeah, he started the war on drugs, which is no doubt the most fruitless war that has ever been thought up in world history.
But then we saw a little bit the insanity, too, of those days, because that's when really one of the big battles then, well, some of the stuff was going on, which I thought really was not the biggest issue, was about the flag.
What was going on with the flag?
Bush made a little thing about, about not flag burning.
Oh, yeah.
Which really, to me, was not.
I don't know. I think people are just putting a little too much emphasis on, let's be honest, a piece of cloth.
Yes.
I mean, yes, what it symbolizes is, the country, freedom, et cetera, yeah. But, I mean, I don't get it. Maybe I'm uninformed on that, but I don't understand
But the other thing was, I learned about extremism in those days a little bit, because back then, one of the big issues was abortion. And you could not get off the hill. I used to like to go walk around. There were a lot of really good things. The Roy Rogers out there, a fond memory. There was a Roy Rogers. They always had deals.
Good old Roy Rogers.
And there was also the library court there, which was not a court. It was at the Supreme Court. They would have meetings there. All of us tried to go because they had the best donuts I've ever seen. Really, I mean, these things were miraculous.
Oh, man, one day.
But it's the library court. That's what it was called for some reason. It was in the Supreme Court building. And it had nothing to do with the Supreme Court, but you would have meetings from groups there. And they always said, they were very nice to us in my study committee, where some people had internships they weren't very happy with. They tried to get us involved. They always said, okay, there's these events. We're going to make sure you get on the floor of Congress.
God forbid they actually take an interest in you.
Which I did.
Oh,
and I remember we saw the president of Mexico at the time. And I'm standing on the floor of Congress, and all I thought of was Paul Simon. He's sitting there. This is not the Paul Simon in the band. This is the senator.
Yeah.
Illinois. But he always wore the bow ties.
Right. I've seen.
I just wanted to take that bow tie and it looks so cute.
Yeah, or just like, doing, snap it back.
But so and when you're that age, it's really cool. I saw the president of South Korea.
See that,
and I saw the president of Mexico. When you're a kid, like 20, and you're going on the floor of Congress,
for a 20-something to stand on the floor of such an important historic building in this country.
And you get that pretentious twit syndrome because I had my ID, I knew all the security. You had to go through, it's not like it is today. We had one incident, there was a congressman from Pennsylvania, and we were in the Cannon building, Office 402.
Okay.
The Cannon, because there's Cannon, Longworth, and the other one whose name I forget at the moment. And that too.
Yeah,
and there's some constituent tried to come in with a gun, but that was about the only thing.
Yeah.
But I remember walking in and we'd always have tourists up there.
Oh, God.
And they'd be waiting. I'd be coming in, I had my badge on, I'm a kid. And security, hi, Rob, go on. You just feel like, look at this.
Yeah, I'm on top of the world.
And you'd hold out your name, look at this here.
Well, it was the same thing. Several years ago, before he moved on to a different career path, a good friend of mine from college was a congressional aide in D.C., and he got, I think we stopped down to visit him, and my sister and I think maybe my dad was.
Is it who I think it is?
Yes.
We won't say the name because it might infringe national security.
My very good friend Josh.
But the thing is, I want to point out with this guy, He was in there, and the Congress survived.
Yeah, exactly. And he worked with a congressman from Florida. Honest to God, I'm not just saying this. The name of who it was escapes me. But he took us...
That's a weird name.
Yeah, I know. And then must be German.
We were there.
But he took us through the
I'm
Capitol.
going to interrupt for a second.
Okay.
Because back then, one of the famous congressmen from Florida was Claude Pepper, who was this guy who had to be like 120 or something.
That sounds like a guy
But
who's
do you
wearing
just imagine a movie with... There was a guy, Claude, but he was renowned as being a mummy, basically.
No, the name like Claude Pepper, you should be wearing a white linen suit, a fedora, sitting on a porch in a rocking chair, sipping a mint julep, going, "It's good to own land."
That's all I picture. I never saw the guy. But one of the things...
Well, maybe because he wasn't real. Maybe he was more of an idea.
But one of the things that was funny, too, is we would work on legislation. One of the big kicks, there's a couple minor bills where I would see a representative say the stuff I said.
Yeah.
Which is scary when you think a 20-year-old kid is saying stuff for legislators. This little secret for all of you, you may not know this. You may not know this, but like for grad school and stuff, that's called legislative process classes. They do not write legislation. Other people do the legislation.
You pulled the curtain back.
I literally assigned Hank Brown. He was a senator from Colorado. Bob Dornan, who was a really interesting character. They always had somebody as a chairman of the Republican Study Committee. Bob Dornan, B1 Bob at the time. Now, this is a character out of the movies again. He was a Korean War vet. He's one of these really gung-ho stereotype 50s right-wing guys. Mm. Very bombastic. He ran for president in 1996.
God.
He represented Orange County. And the thing at the time...
I don't even remember that.
The thing at the time for California, Southern California had all these right-wing guys who stuck together, like Bill Dannemeyer, who I didn't particularly like a lot because he was Mr. Wow, the gays are going to take over the world. I did not appreciate that guy. There's Dana Rohrabacher, who used to have a thing in his office of him surfing, calling it a fresh wave hits Congress.
Oh, come on,
And he sort of looked like Arn Anderson.
Well, I could get behind a guy that looked like Arn Anderson, but if you're pulling shit like that, fresh wave, no.
Because he was new, and all he would talk about on the floor was, I am new. Okay, 20 years later, I think he actually just lost either this election or last election. They finally got rid of him, and I still wonder if he was going around saying
that's what I mean. The I'm new thing works for maybe the first month. But then you have to actually do something.
But we would have funny ones because we would work on things like one of the big things down there at the time was about funding the NEA.
NEA.
That's National Endowment for Arts because they were going on about the filth, or so-called.
Oh.
And one of my views on it is, art should be pure. They shouldn't really have any government hands on it.
No, I agree.
But that was a big one. But the other thing we went on about, too, they were going on about, unfortunately, some of these crazy groups were going on about trying to keep groups out of Catholic universities that went against the religious tenets. So it's all this minor stuff. But I'll show you how it gets bogged down. There were major bills out there. One bill got bogged down because some congressman in Wisconsin wanted to stick a rider on it for funding for National Moose Day.
Oh, so I'd be all about National Moose Day.
So you have to understand, say there's something important. Say there's something for like child vaccines or something. There's an important bill. Okay, it goes through Congress.
Well, that's what I mean.
All these other people in Congress try to attach their little pet projects to it, like a National Moose Day.
And I'm wondering if they think it's something that might pass and they really hate it, they'll attach some ridiculous rider to it in the hopes that it gets killed. Like, take the houses of all the widows of soldiers.
Well, I am responsible. I admit I'm partly responsible for one. This was the time of Tiananmen Square in China, and there was a resolution. You actually had to go through channels for this. They wanted to go on the floor to honor the people for standing up to the tanks and everything in China. Yeah. And I had to call up, you basically called up the different congressional offices and asked, can we add this? And it was nothing. And you would hear like Ike Skelton. I remember another good name, Ike Skelton from Missouri, the Democrat. Call his office. So what's it about? What the hell? Why not?
Yeah.
But that was one of the fun things. I got to meet a lot of these people because what we would do sometimes, we would have things. We would go to Democrat and Republican offices and deliver these things. And Jack Buechner, he was an interesting character. He was a congressman from Missouri who used to get chased by Secret Service because he would try to go in office. He'd throw pumpkins out his window on Halloween. Now, I don't know why he never ran for president.
I'm shocked as well.
But I have a meeting. I had actually a face-to-face with the future presidential candidate, John Kerry.
Oh, yes.
Because this was when he was senator from Massachusetts, and I was going around handing out these things. You would go into the office, and they had to sign them. It was one of these bills for whatnot or whatever. Yeah. But you would go around, and a lot of times the person with their eyes, you go in, ask, they'd come out. So he came out for a second. He comes out. He looks at it. Goes, what the fuck is this? So that is my meeting with an almost future president and secretary of state.
See, it just shows that he was a human after all.
Yes, and it goes again. Whenever I saw him nominated, would you believe that's the only thing I think of him?
Well, it's the only interaction you've ever had with him, so it makes sense.
But that's what it was like back then. It was a lot more, I hate to say it was kind of fun in a way. It wasn't like you were throwing... The abortion thing was not fun. Now, I have to say that two of the worst experiences of my life, there's a botanical gardens down there.
Yeah.
And we used to go walk down there during lunchtime, go walk around. One time, a plant opened there that smells like supposedly...
Oh, the corpse flower?
Yes, it opened. They had to close it down and bring people in hazmat suits. But the other one was they used to have the abortion battles around there sometimes. So if you're working on the hill, you're walking around, you're going to see this stuff. But I remember the one time that stuck out to me was there was the pro side, the anti side. People were throwing tomatoes at the other side saying they were fetuses. Then I saw a priest get kicked in the ghoulie, so luckily he's celibate anyways. And I just remember the intensity of this going, I never want to get to the point where anything gets to me that much.
Well, it's sad to say it looks like a lot of the country has gotten to that point.
But what do you think? Now, go to some of your experiences with your mom. Why did she decide to run? And
I honestly did, because she ran for city council or for town council. I think she was actually pregnant with me. So I'm not sure what
you vice mayor or something?
So I'm not 100% sure what her motivation was for running. Maybe she thought she could make a difference, and she definitely did when she was mayor. Make a difference, and businesses expanded, and there's this big shopping plaza that wasn't there when I was a kid, but because, she did her thing, is there now, and it's still there, shockingly. They haven't gotten rid of it. But I don't know. That's one of the things I'm actually going to see her soon. Maybe I'll ask her.
I'd like to find out one. I went to the wedding of my friend David Aquesta in Geneva. This is New York, not Switzerland. And I actually struck up a big conversation with a person who's about 43, 44, young guy. He's the mayor of Lyons, New York. And he was talking to me about change and things. And he sounded like your mom a lot about it. He was a Republican, but at the time, he was an Andy Cuomo fan. He used to call him, this was way back in the day. But this goes to show you, again, crossing party lines. This was back probably around 2000 or so.
Right.
But he was talking about how he wanted to bring change to the town, so I always wonder how he did or not. I liked him personally.
Well, that's the thing. You tend to like these people personally, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, they don't have a hope in hell.
No, and I remember, because we would do these debates on campus again for the election, for the presidential election in 1988, and we would try to get people. You obviously weren't going to get the big honchos to come, so we would have representatives. We'd have Mayor Ryan, Tom Ryan was the mayor here for years, and we would have Joanne Van Zandt. She was the head of the Republican Party. How did they come to the debate? They drove together.
Isn't that weird? And the sky didn't open up and rain blood, and horses weren't eating dogs, and the apocalypse didn't happen, did it? And
people would ask you, go up, they would talk, and they would sort of be the surrogates, and you would ask them questions. There was some crazy hippie guy who went about these issues or something. Don't know where this guy came from. It's college. But otherwise, everybody in Dr. Harmon's saying, well, yeah. So I had to go on this big babble about foreign policy because that's the only thing I knew about. So, but otherwise, everybody was civil. Nobody was going, I'm going to be out here protesting. And we did have the Gulf War, the start of the Gulf War, and I was going to graduate.
Right.
And we had some people desperately trying to pretend it was the 1960s and protest, but nobody really... You really couldn't get into it.
No, because it wasn't with the same...
Our views at the time were, okay, if we have the draft, am I going to work in a kitchen? Am I going to get stuck?
Am I going to be peeling potatoes, or what's going on?
And I heard my cousin Scott drove a tank there. He was in the military. He said you had to wear a thing for sand ticks. That would not have been fun.
Yeah, no.
But it was just a different time, and that's what sort of makes me sad about seeing things how they are today.
It really is, because you wonder if you go back and if you could bring some of the founding fathers here and have them look at the situation that we as a society are in, how sad they would be.
And you would go back to the days of the machine, like Platt. He was called the easy boss in New York when Roosevelt was mayor. And Teddy Roosevelt was completely uncorrupt. Whatever you think about him, he was a very uncorrupt. He would have loved society these days.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess the easy boss, they had machine politics, but what they would do is if they had a national thing, they would put their differences aside.
Yeah, to work together to better the country.
Where these days, it just seems like a lot of them are just in it for themselves and just...
That's a sad thing.
They don't really care about the country, but it's also apathy, though, too.
You know, it's a big country, and guess what, folks? We all have to live in it.
You go back to, say, like the mayoral primary in Rochester almost like 6 years ago. Yeah, the turnout was 17%.
Oh, 17% voted for the highest elected official.
Now
in the
think
city.
about that. Now this is supposed to be a democracy. Some countries, a lot of countries, you don't get.
They're not permitted to vote.
Yeah, or you do vote, but there's one dude.
Yeah.
Albania is one of my favorite totals. Back in communist days, the vote was like
like a 99.8%.
There was one guy who voted against the party, so I guess they showed they were objective.
No, they did. That guy didn't even exist. They just said that he did.
But they rubber stamped him.
Yeah.
So you can vote, and I do have some issues with voting a little bit. Whereas again, show me a candidate. Suppose you really are just not happy.
Right.
And that goes back to what we used to call the PIG, the party in government, where the idea of the political parties is to find candidates to run. And we have to. Part of it is, why would you want to run in a lot of ways? Because you're going to go, if they're going to be digging through all your stuff, you might be the nicest person in the world.
That's the problem. They're going to find shit on you, and if they can't find shit on you, they're going to make it up.
They're going to find out you were at Pizza Hut when you were 12, and you didn't leave a tip because you used the money to play a video game.
Yeah, and then you went and, you pissed on the seat and didn't clean it off.
And I think it gets so nasty like that. But I also think a lot of the negative is a lot of people don't have any positive to bring. You look at a lot of people, they come from a background. They used to make fun of Tom DeLay in the House, the Hammer, as they call him, the congressman from Texas. Because why? He was a businessman. He was an exterminator.
That son of a bitch.
He actually did something. He actually did not just come up through the system.
Yeah, he was a self-made.
And there's a place for lawyers, but when you're just a lawyer and you're filled with lawyers, you might know the legislation, but you don't know anything about business, economics, foreign policy. So there's all these problems, and the thing is, people have to get more. I suppose I'm trying to say with this whole thing, it's obviously we're not shouting at each other. We're not doing like a Rush Limbaugh or a Rachel Maddow or who the hell are some of those other characters. I don't even listen to them.
Oh, like Glenn Beck, all those assholes. I'm sorry, but they are.
Well, they are pretty much, and I don't even really listen to them. So there's a thought about Michael Savage, and I've honestly really never listened to the guy.
No.
But I've heard that there's theories that he was the guy, that it's an act.
Well, I firmly believe that. Like, do you really think Rush Limbaugh believes half the shit he says?
I think they do. I think suppose you believe, like, suppose you were going to do right wing, left wing. I suppose you have to make it, it's like Michael Kinsley said about Crossfire with Pat Buchanan. They get along very well.
Yeah.
But he said, you have to get angry. You have to get, because it's the show. That's why nobody's listening to this one, because we're not yelling at each other.
That's the thing. And I've heard it's like, well, you guys need, tension. No. Go screw.
No.
I'm not manufacturing it for...
Well, we have Jeff and we have the
Yeah, exactly. We've got the Rageonomics people that they'll be back, but I guess to start to put a bow on this thing, times change and not always for the better.
And I'll say there is the election coming up. Make sure you're informed. And if you like your guy there in the White House, make sure you like him for the reasons you like him. If I asked you, what do you think's good about him? Don't just say, well, he was on The Apprentice or something, or, well, he kept those commies out. Try to tell me what you think's good. If you don't like him, don't just say, I hate him.
And I firmly believe that despite what I believe, if somebody comes to me with a contrarian point of view and is able to explain it, okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome to your opinion.
It wasn't only Russian collusion. It was out in Mongolia.
Oh, I thought it was the Seychelles. or Madagascar.
No, Al Gore said it briefly after 9/11. He said, George Bush is my president. And that we had, at a time of national emergency, it's like when Reagan got shot and he made that quip in the hospital about, are you Democrats or Republicans? So the doctor said, we're all Republicans today. And we don't have that today where it's like this labeling. It's like you talk about trying to accept people if you're gay, straight, whatever you believe. But if somebody came up to you and said you're a Republican or Democrat, you might hate their guts.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
So, be nice.
that you know what? That's the moral of the story. Don't be mean.
Yeah, I mean, we thought about even for doing this because it's like a subject. We try to have fun. Yeah. But I suppose it's like...
But it is interesting.
It's like trying to... Yeah, well, you will do historical ones, but it's like trying to take that cough medicine when you're a kid.
Yeah. You just want to get it over with.
Yes, so...
Oh.
I thought it was fun, though.
No, it was a fun one. And you know what? Yeah. Like I say, times change, but the moral of the story is... just don't be mean.
And I think about those days, and I could be so pretentious because I loaded up at the D.C. store for Christmas. Yeah. Everybody got a Capitol ornament. The Christmas cards were awesome. See, then nobody cared about politics. They loved the cards. They loved the ornaments I gave them. And I got my one friend's mom. They were from Italy. She wanted to thank me personally because I got her a John F. Kennedy campaign button. Yeah. So, in those days, nobody really,
It was different.
Yeah, so... Now, if I got somebody a Trump campaign button, I remember, when this happened again, my thing for being a Republican, then in full disclosure, I'm an independent now. I'm not registered with any party. Yeah. But we had a teacher in high school, not a professor. She would push the Democratic Party on you.
Now, and you know what? Schools have no place to do that,
she would do, for example, say you had a test, and you would say she was a Mondale fan.
Yeah.
And she would say, okay, now, write who would be the best candidate for president. And I thought there was no place, and I was really mad about that a little.
Yeah, there's no
some
place.
dastardly fiend snuck in her office, stuck a Reagan bumper sticker on her, campaign thing. She spent half the class screaming the class out, saying how she never pushed Mondale on us, but somebody had the nerve to do this. Cognitive dissonance, and there's no place for that.
No, don't be mean.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. So
yeah, don't be mean.
Hopefully this was kind of fun. And
yeah, and there will be more historical ones. Yeah, and. Got anything else?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I'm sick of politics.
I am too. Let's put something nice.
So I was out with my very, very good friend Meg Williams the other night. She had a show at Love and Cup, and she has not been in town in 3 years. She lives in Nashville now. And I said, Meg, you want to come on the show? And she would love to come on the show and play for you. But she lives in Nashville, and she's on tour, so she went off to Virginia by the time we're taping this. But she'll be back to spend time with her family, and she'll come here and play, and we'll get her on, and you'll all love her. But I told her I'd play something from her new album. It's called "It's Take Me As I Am," the Muscle Shoals Sessions. It's Meg Williams. And now this is her words, not mine. I'm going to play "Sometimes I Need You Too," and I'm playing that song because she has a video out for it. And now she said that's the song if you have a lover, a relationship, a friend, and you feel you're not giving, really. You're giving tons to it, not getting any back. Now, I take the fifth. Those are Meg's words, not mine.
Okay.
But it's a good song. Her. And there's a video for it. And it's a very good song, and it's Meg Williams. And we're going to leave with that because be kind to everybody and enough politics. And
enough politics.
Vote for me if you want. I don't care.
Cthulhu 2020.
Yep.
And that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Tell me something's wrong, yeah, you can't keep it together. I'm always by your side, trying to make it better. But the whole world's out to get you, and you can't keep up. But living in this life is hard on everyone. Yeah, everyone. And I know you got your troubles, but baby, I got mine too. And you know that I go running whenever you need me to. Yeah, I'll do anything for you. But don't forget, sometimes I need you too. to get caught up in the moments in your mind. You feel like you got nothing to show, but you're working all the time. I wanna help you with your problems, take the pain away.